Yeah, Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, they're great. But could we get some fucking ladies up in this joint? It's Women's History Month, and my fucked up fairy tales are about to get feminine as folk. Bonk. Yes, this month I'm sharing fairy tales and folk tales that were gifted to us by women writers, storytellers, and folklorists. Tonight I'm weaving together several tales from Estonia, as recorded in Wonder Tales from Baltic Wizards by Frances Jenkins Olcott. I'll share more info on the writer later, because I know you're here first and foremost for the fairy tales. Tonight's tale tracks the adventures of a peasant girl named Elsa, whose life is changed thanks to a mysterious posse of women in an enchanted wood. Once a young girl named Elsa was picking strawberries in the wood with other children from her village. The bright berries tantalized them, and they followed the berry bushes until they found a whole field flush with the snack. But as they filled their baskets, one boy suddenly looked around them in horror. "Get out of here! Run!" he cried. "We've wandered into the Tontla Wood!" The children began to scatter in fear, for the village folk regarded the Tontla Wood with dread. It was rumored that humanoid creatures who could fly into the sky like owls lurked there, but little else was known about them. So if one wandered into the wood, one fled right back out again. But Elsa wasn't too keen to skedaddle. She had herself one of those evil stepmothers, and her weak-willed father didn't do anything to stand up to the woman when she abused the girl. Whatever lives in this beautiful wood can't be worse than what's waiting for me at home. So she kept filling her basket with berries as her peers abandoned her. As Elsa foraged, another child appeared from the trees with a small black dog. She was Elsa's age, but clothed in beautiful silk garments. "You're so brave. Not like the other children. Will you be my new playmate? Your days will be full of games, and you'll get to eat all the berries you could fill your belly with. Mother won't mind. What do you say?" "I say hell yes!" The child of the wood grabbed Elsa's hand and brought them deeper into the forest, the little dog trotting along with them. Suddenly the trees parted, and the girls entered a magnificent orchard. Trees laden with fruit boasted bright, colorful birds in the branches. The birds were bejeweled, and so tame and friendly they flew right into your hand. In the middle of the orchard stood a mansion constructed of crystal and gems. A richly dressed lady reclined on a bench by the door. "Who have you brought here, my girl?" "I found her in the woods, stuffing her face with strawberries. Won't you let her stay here as my playmate?" "That might be up to your new friend. And who are you? Would you even like to stay?" "My name is Elsa, and my parents suck. And yes, I would like to stay in this crystal palace where birds wear earrings and we get to eat strawberries all day. Never send me home." "I'll think about it. You two have a fun afternoon." Well, that was less definitive than I would have liked to hear. "Don't you worry about her. I know she'll say yes. Here, let me get my toy box. Check this out." The child opened the box to reveal a leaf of lady smock, a mussel shell, and 2 fish bones. The leaf shone with a few drops of dew, and the child removed the leaf and shook it over the grass. The 2 girls were immediately transported to the sea. Water surrounded them at every angle but for a little patch of land beneath their feet. The child set the mussel shell on the water and retrieved the fish bones. Before their eyes, the mussel shell grew and transformed into a boat big enough to fit 12 children. The children got inside, and as they settled, the fish bones grew into oars. The water gently rocked the girls, and soon the waves were full of tiny skiffs, piloted by sprites. They exuded joy and song, and the beings kept repeating one musical word. "Kisiki! Kisiki!" "What is Kisiki?" "I am Kisiki." They sailed most of the day, until the distant call from the lady of the mansion beckoned them home. Kisiki took the leaf from the box and dipped it in the water, whereupon the ocean dried up but for a few dewdrops, and the girls found themselves back at the orchard. Kisiki ushered Elsa into the mansion. Inside, the mansion housed a chamber with a long banquet table in the middle. 24 women sat around it, all dressed in the luxurious silk robes like the lady and Kisiki. Kisiki's mother sat at the head of the table. The table was set with gold and silver platters, boasting cakes and delicacies that Elsa had never even dreamed of tasting. And the women conferenced among each other in hushed tones. At last, Kisiki's mother spoke to a serving girl, who left and returned with a little old man who had a beard longer than himself. The women of the house gestured to Elsa as she spoke to him. "Take in the look of this peasant girl carefully. I'm going to adopt her. Make me a copy in her place that I can send back to the village. The old man eyed Elsa shrewdly, then bowed and left the room. Well, what do you say, Elsa? Would you like to remain here as my daughter's playmate? Please don't make me go back. Even if my parents didn't suck, how could I leave this place? Now don't cry. If you're a good little girl, you can stay here until you're grown. You'll be the happiest you've ever been, and Kasiki will give you the finest education. But first we need to send back the Elsa clone. The old man returned with a hunk of clay and a covered basket. He fashioned the clay into a doll, and the lady checked it over. Now, Elsa, I need a drop of your blood. Oh, geez, this is where it gets weird, isn't it? I sold my soul to the devil for a boat ride in a seashell. Calm down, you needn't be afraid. It will bring you nothing but fortune in offering it. The lady stuck Elsa with a golden needle, and the old man took the needle and thrust the blood-stained tip into the heart of the doll. He placed the doll in the covered basket. That night, Elsa was put up in a beautiful bedroom with a very fancy silk bed. When Elsa awoke from the first restful sleep she'd had in years, she found that her peasant garments were gone, and she had her own beautiful silk robes to wear in their place. She was bathed and styled. Then Elsa saw where her old garments had gone. Overnight, the clay doll had grown into Elsa's size and developed her exact features. It had a life of its own and ran about like a little girl would. And like any rational human, Elsa found the clay clone utterly terrifying. Don't fear the thing, my girl. That doll won't hurt you. We're sending it home as a changeling of sorts. And you needn't feel bad for the doll. Your wicked stepmother may batter it all that she wants, and it won't feel any pain. To me, this is how we start the eventual clay doll uprising. But that would be a completely different story. No, we will not learn more about this clay doll brought to life just to take the traumatic childhood of another. We're sticking with Elsa for the rest of her story. True to the lady's word, Elsa had a magical childhood from that moment on. She lived in such bliss, with such pleasures and privilege, that her prior life seemed like a mere dream. Magic served her and the women of the Crystal Mansion. The table set itself, the food cooked itself, it all cleared itself. All it took was a little old man tapping a wand on a magic rock, which birthed a magic rooster, which would crow to summon whatever they needed. As the years passed by, Elsa grew into a lovely young woman. But Kasiki never aged a day. One day, in her new young adulthood, Elsa was summoned to the private quarters of the lady, a privilege she'd never before been granted. When she entered, she found the woman flush with tears. My dear girl, it is time for you to depart. What? Why would you make me go? For your own good. I told you as long as you were a child you could remain here. But you are now full grown. And you are mortal, you are not one of us. You must leave, but you will thrive. You'll meet a loving husband, and happiness will follow. The lady styled Elsa's hair with a golden comb, and hung a small gold locket on a silk chain around her neck. She placed a seal ring on the young woman's finger. Then she summoned the old man. The lady left them alone without another word. As Elsa stood there gaping, the old man tapped her head with his divining rod 3 times, and Elsa felt herself transforming. Her arms became powerful wings. Her legs became clawed feet, and she soared into the air in the body of an eagle. In her eagle form, she flew south for many days. Toward the end of her journey, she found herself in a low wood, where she could hear hunting dogs. Suddenly, an arrow sliced through the air, and it pierced her. She plummeted down through the trees, fainting from fright. When she awoke, she was back in her human form and lying in the forest. And someone stood above her, offering her his hand. It was a handsome prince, and he spoke to her. Get this, babe. You've been in my dreams every night for the past 6 months. I dreamed I would find you here in the wood in this exact spot. How did you find me? I was just an eagle soaring through the sky. I shot that eagle clean out of the sky, and it turned out to be you. Thanks for shooting me? Hey, babe, no problem. You're coming home with me. Elsa returned with the prince to his estate, where his father the king greeted them happily. And 3 days later, those kids got married. The lady of the Crystal Mansion sent her 50 cartloads of gifts. And when the king died, Elsa became queen. And as for the Tantla wood, it disappeared and was never discovered again. The end. Get to know the women who tell fairy tales for Women's History Month. Frances Jenkins Olcott was a children's book writer, and she was also a librarian who was a pioneer for children's services in libraries. She was born in France in 1872, then emigrated to Albany, New York with her family. Her parents definitely influenced her future career with fairy tales. They taught her a love of languages and translation skills, a love of classic literature and a respect for research, and she grew up watching her mother translate old children's stories from France. So she was pretty much destined for librarianship. She went to library school in 1896 and quickly became an assistant librarian in Brooklyn shortly thereafter. And her claim to fame, at least for us librarians, came in 1900 when she became the head librarian of children's services at the Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh. It was there she developed the first formal training program for future children's librarians. The work she developed and promoted feels very similar to a lot of things modern children's librarians do today. She was passionate about outreach, providing services to juvenile detention centers. She provided special services for immigrant families and partnered with schools. Later, she left librarianship to become a prolific writer of children's books, and she made a very good living at it. She died in 1963. Now, despite her work sounding somewhat progressive for the era, she was far from perfect. And like many well-intentioned white women of her era, she had some pretty messed up conceptions of other cultures. This is very clear in some of her writing, and it's not uncommon for anyone who shared folktales and fairy tales back in the day. Grimm, Andersen, Oscar Wilde, all of them had problematic elements in their fairy tales. So it wasn't shocking that the introduction of the Wonder Tales of Baltic Wizards had some questionable ideas in its introduction. And I tell you this to spare you, because luckily some of the nicer tales that aren't tainted with that are available online. I initially found this one on this lovely site, Baltic Tales. But if you do really want to get in the weeds, you can also find a lot of her stuff on the Internet Archive. So Frances, this Women's History Month, I thank you for the work you did in children's library services. I thank you for some of the weird little stories you collected. And I hope you would have better regard for the folks whose tales you told if you were living in a more modern era.